Hi everyone, this is Sharon. Today I have a journal flip through for you. This journal is made in vintagey kind of French style, I would say. On the front I've got this little piece of vintage jewelry that I use to adorn the tie. And then I tied up the journal with some kind of goldish brown sari silk ribbon. And then I just added a couple of postcards that I tucked into the tie. So there's this one, and then this beautiful one. Love the handwriting on there. For the journal cover, I used this old book that I had. I love this kind of pinky red on the front with the beautiful flowers. And I expanded the spine, and I just love how rough and tumble this old spine is, and I just integrated that with my fabric spine. And then on the back side, the back cover was really rough. The fabric came loose from the book board, and so I just flipped it around and took the inside of the back cover and used that as my outside. And I just brought my fabric around and kept all the nice loose fringy edges, and then just added a piece of lace. So for the inside images in this journal, I have pretty much dedicated this journal to Ida Jane Designs. I've got a lot of her kits. I purchased some new ones recently, and I just haven't had a chance to use them yet. So I thought I'm going to look through all of her kits. They all blend nicely, and it's primarily all of her images in here, for sure, for the pages and most of the ephemera as well. For the inside covers, I use these old rag paper book pages. So I've got this one on the front, and then I've got this one on the back. And then I use this French ticking fabric for the inside of my spine. On this first page, I love this beautiful image of the women, and I just embellished that with a little bit of lace and a vintage button. Here I took one of her images to use for the page. This is a telegram. And then at the top I've got this leather, it says bookmark. It came out of an old ledger that I had, and I just added that to the page. And then here, this page is an old ledger in this beautiful blue. I just punched this frame on there, or I should say embossed it on. On this side, I created this little tag. So I've got this top pocket. I embellished that with this doily piece. And then in there, I've got this little card that I put in there. This is like a specimen card. And then the back, I just added some ledger paper and a little bit of fabric. What I love about this ledger paper too, it's got these original stamps on there. On this side of the page, it's a beautiful collage page, so I just added some string to this brad at the top, and then this is embossed paper, kind of a handmade paper. Here I just added a little bit of sari trim to the top of the page, and then over on this side, I've got this flip out and use this botanical book page. And I just added some extra paper on the edge for strength. And then in there, I tucked this journaling card that I made. It's got some embossed paper on the back. And then I've got this old ledger sheet tucked in there. It's a nice old French handwriting. Here I've got this onion skin correspondence from Paris, and it's from the early 1900s. And I used that as my pages, and then just created some pockets and stitched on those, added a label. And then in those pockets, I made a couple of journaling cards. Beautiful image. I love this background paper, really pretty bluish green. I backed this with some bean dyed paper and added a little label and some string to the top. And then this one's similar. Here I just added a little bit of stencil paste to the top. I can't talk today. On this side of the page, again, another one of those pretty botanical book pages. And then here I've got this clip to hold that in, and I just added a couple of pretty little beads on there. And then in there, I've got this tag that I made. It's kind of set up as a sampler, so I took her digital image and just added my own lace sample pieces to that. And then I punched the bottom of the tag. And then on the back, now this image, and this image were all part of the same collage page. And so I just kind of cut those apart and reworked them. So here I created a side tuck with that image and then used that for the back. And then I just tucked some writing paper in there. And I added this velvet ribbon to the top. Here on this side of the page, I clipped over the side of the page this pretty vintage wallpaper piece. And then I made this tag and added some lace to the top. And then I just had kind of coming around the page. On this side of the page, I've got this handkerchief with this pretty edge to it. I created my corner tuck from that, and then this is the pretty image in the background. Here I've got this original photo of these people looking like they're having fun on a summer day. And it looked like it came out of the album. The back wasn't very pretty, so I just backed it with some paper. And then I also inserted this antique check from 1915. Here on this page, I just embellished with some punched paper. And then over here, I created a top tuck and used this beautiful old antique French music paper for my page. And then in there, I have this page from a prayer book. I just pulled that out, tucked it in there, added a little bit of embellishment on there. Another beautiful collage page, and I just added a little bit of some, probably a doily or a napkin or something, a remnant. Here on this side of the page, I created this pocket with this beautiful marbled paper. It's got a really nice texture to it. It must have been hand marbled. And in there, I've got this pressed flower. I've got an original calling card, and it's got the person's name underneath there. And then I also have this vellum piece that I printed and tucked in there. This is a page from a French embroidery book that I have. And then on this side, I've got a couple of little pieces that I made that I just clipped to the top of the page. And again, I think these all may have come from the same sheet of paper. I can't remember the digital, but I did that quite often in these, just kind of tore them apart. So I've got this little piece, the Eiffel Tower, and then this little remnant. Looks like a wallpaper image. And then I love this beautiful image, and then I just adorn the top of the page. Here in the center of the signature, I've got some pretty beads that I hung from the bottom. I reinforced the center with this fabric piece that I just kind of glued down to the paper. And then I created these side tucks with this dotted vellum and punched the edges of those. And then in those tucks, I've got this piece. So this is a vintage postcard of mine that I printed on, like some shelf lining paper. And it makes it, very clear and transparent. And then I just stitched that onto some old book page. So this is a book page. I created these little folders. And then on the inside of the folder, I just added this beautiful piece of handmade paper that I embossed. Then just added a vintage stamp to that. And then this is the other half of the postcard. And this old book page has this beautiful image of autumn. Here I just embellished the page with this fabric ruffle. And then on this page, I've got this old photo, this woman. I just added a laundry label to her. And then this is one of Char's wallpaper kits. I just love the colors in there. Here on this side of the page, I had these clipped on with my clip. So I've got this little card, this floral image that I waxed. Just added some paper to the back, stitched that down. And then this is something that I've had in my stash for a while, this woman by the seashore, and then another one on the back side. On this side of the page, I created this top tuck with some linen fabric, and then I added some wool over the top, and this little applique I put on there. And then in there, I've got this piece. So I won't take it apart. I've got it nicely tied up with this ribbon, but I've got the seam biting ribbon on there, and then I've got this treated napkin kind of layer that goes over the top on both sides. And then in there, I just have sort of a scrappy notepad that I tucked inside. Here I embellished the page with some of my watercolor swatches, some fabric, and a wax seal. And then on this side of the page, I embellished the flap with some texture paste. And then let's just pull this off on this side first. Won't want to hurt my nice music paper. So that flips out. And then in there, I've got this old French letter from 1859. It's beautiful handwriting on the inside of that one. And then this is another one of Char's images that I printed out on some construction paper to make it look like old wallpaper. And I just did a little bit of stamping on the back. So on this side of the page, I had this little tag clipped on. I just added her with a brad at the top. Here I created this belly band on the page. This was part of the image, so I just reprinted it and glued it down. And then in there, I tucked this piece. This is a ruby and pearl piece, but I love the idea of a floral catalog page in there. So I just added a little label to the bottom and then did some light pink stenciling on the back side. Here I created this pocket with this beautiful fabric, which is also the fabric I used on the spine. And then I just added this fabric yo-yo to embellish that a little bit. And then in that pocket, I've got this vellum piece and then an old book page from a French playbook. Here on this page, I just did a little stenciling across the top. And then here I've created a pocket by folding that ledger paper up and in, and then I just added this full button to the corner. And then in there I've got this tag. Did some kind of two-tone stenciling to the back. And this pretty tag. Another beautiful collage sheet, and I just added some lace to that. Here on this side of the page, again, I added a wax seal with some lace. These are book pages that came out of a book on Paris. I just love the images in there. I created this little ribbon tab, so you can just pull that out and take a look at all of the images on both sides of the page, and then this one as well. Here again, another beautiful page. There was a digital bow on this page, so I just went over the top of that with this velvet piece and then just added these little strings on there. On this side of the page in the pocket, I've got these two items that I made. Beautiful image. Again, I did some stenciling on the back. And then here I took some of this beautiful blue ledger paper and just stitched this image to the front. Then on the inside, I've got this wallpaper pocket, and in there I've got a couple of pieces. Here on this page, I'll let you see what the page looks like. It's really pretty. And then I got this cabinet card that I tucked in there. Just did a little bit of embellishing on there, but it's got a nice back to it. And then this is one of Char's images. It's a doily, and I just cut that out and added a little lacy piece to the front of that, but that would be a fun place to journal on the back. And then I also inserted this book page, and this comes from an old cookbook that I have, but I love the image on there. And then the last page I just embellished with a little bit of lace and this vellum piece. So that is my journal for today. This is going off to a very special person, and it's already on its way. I thank you so much for coming along with me today, and until next time, bye-bye.